the October 24th meeting of the Human Relations Ad Hoc Committee. And with that, I will ask for the roll.
Blessum,
Here.
Burlingame,
Here.
Dykeman, Mathested,
Here.
Olson,
Here.
Schuler,
Here.
Staley,
Here.
Zablotny, Zeltinger.
Here. And prior to us moving ahead, I was asked to remind everyone to speak clearly into your microphones because we are broadcasting this, and it's helpful for anyone that's listening online, and also for those that need to go back and review the meetings and get everything stated clearly. So when it is your turn to speak, please speak clearly into the microphones. So item number 2 is the approval of minutes.
Madam Chair, I move the approval of minutes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Any discussion?
Just real quickly, I do think the additions and adjustments to the 15th look great. I think that captured what happened. So when I went back and reviewed it, I didn't remember it perfectly clearly either, so I'm glad we got it.
Thank you. All right, you can call the roll. Oh, yes, Lyanne.
On Article 10, I think it was back in September. I think it was approved that we were going to change Article 10 from officer job descriptions to officer duties. Was that not, was amended, approved in, I think it was
I
12.
do remember that conversation. Lisa will look back at her minutes.
On
here for-
the, on the 12th of September at the bottom. Did I read that wrong?
You did, yes.
I do, yep.
You did. Change to duties, officer duties, correct.
You changed it now? Oh,
For the notes.
So then that needs to be changed on the minutes, correct?
It is correct. It was correct on the minutes.
It is correct on the minutes, okay. All right, any other discussion?
I have one more
Yes, Lyanne.
on the, and then when it said, prepare the agenda prior to each meeting in accordance with the state law. When I checked with city staff, and Lisa can correct me, they said that it wasn't a state law, it was an internal rule to try and get that out early. So I don't know how we're going, if we're going to follow through. If they like to get this out early so people can work on it. Do we need to change that, or is there a state law also one day ahead of time? We're doing it earlier?
City Attorney?
There's not a state, you have to post the agenda prior to the meeting. That's what state law says. But we do have an internal policy in regards to the city council meeting agendas where we try to get it out, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Harold, is it the Thursday is where we try to publish before that agenda? But I don't know that that policy necessarily holds true for just standing committees as well. So if you want a minimum publication time, we could try to codify something like that in here if it's something that you want.
Does the law require 24 hours posted notice for the meeting?
I think with this particular committee moving forward, because it, depending upon how it plays out, having it earlier and not, I don't know if we need the state law in there, if we need to put that state law in there, or if we just remove it and say that it needs to be posted. I'd like to hear other people's thoughts.
Other comments? Mike?
So as we adjusted it, I guess it works because it is in accordance with the law. The law doesn't specify a timing, so we would be fine there. But I do agree with Lyanne. I think based on the nature of the discussions that I think will come with this committee, it would be good to have something there. Even if it's 48 hours, something that says, let's make sure people can see it.
I'd bring something up. We don't know what the future holds as well. So leaving the in accordance with North Dakota state law leaves the flexibility that in the event that there is a change in the state law, that this document would already meet those requirements. It could be flexible in accordance with whatever the law is at the time.
Harold?
If I may, ultimately, I think the main goal is that we're abiding by what state law requires as far as open meeting laws. I would also note that we're on the action item of approval of minutes, so the question should be whether or not the minutes as presented accurately reflect what was talked about before. It sounds like we're talking more about changing what the ordinance says, which should probably be addressed in a later agenda item.
So are you looking at changes to the minutes, Lyanne, or are you satisfied with the way that the minutes are being presented and you could bring that item up at a later time?
As long as we're going to bring it up at a later time so that we can discuss it and have a little bit of time to think about it. Yes, I'm okay.
And I actually would ask that we potentially at the 28th of November meeting, bring up some of these smaller items just to make sure that they are all copacetic and the document works correctly. So maybe we could just address it at that point as well.
Okay. All right. Any other comments related to the minutes? Seeing none, call the roll.
Schuler,
Yes.
Staley,
Yes.
Zeldinger,
Yes.
Blessam,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Mathested. Yes. Olson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Reflect that Travis Zablotny has joined our meeting. Number 3 is review the current red line document. I'm hoping that all of you have had the opportunity to do that, and if you have, if there's any questions or comments related to that prior to moving forward. Seeing none, we will move on to item number 4, which is Article 7, the minutes. Do we have any motion related to this?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Miranda.
I have presented a recommendation for the minutes article of the document and provided it to all members. My recommendation, I'll read it, it's very brief, would be strictly minutes shall be recorded at all Human Relations Committee. You'll notice that I struck out the HRC and went with the Human Relations Committee. I'm not a big fan of acronyms, meetings, by the appointed secretary as indicated in Article X. And then we leave it at that. The reason being is when we worked in Article X and defined the duties, we basically have it already laid out as to what's going to be happening with the minutes. So by reflecting back to Article X, it covers that section sufficiently, in my opinion. So my motion would be to accept the recommendation I've presented to the group.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Discussion?
My only discussion, and I think it's great as is, my only discussion is if we go down this route with the acronym, we might want to come back maybe on the 28th and do the whole thing that way. I'm fine either way, but I do want us to be consistent if we do. Otherwise, I think the language is good.
Okay. Any other discussion?
Just
Miranda?
a point in that, I think most of the amendments that I'm offering will remove the HRC because like I stated before, I'm not a big fan of acronyms, so.
Any other discussion? Any other discussion? Seeing none, call a roll.
Schuler,
Yes.
Staley,
Yes.
Zablotny,
Yes.
Zeldinger,
Yes.
Blessam,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Mathested, Olson. Motion passes.
Motion passes. All right. Move on to number 5, which is Article 8, the amendments.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Miranda.
I have presented a recommendation for an amendment to, did you say Article 8? It should be Article 13.
Oh, yes, you're right. Okay.
Article 13
I have to think back to
amendments.
4th grade when I learned Roman numerals. My apologies. Yes.
So the current language, I believe, is lacking some additional information. So in my proposed amendment, I added initially that the Minot City Council may amend by ordinance the Human Relations Committee charter. That is different than what exists currently. The current amendment says that the committee itself could amend itself by ordinance. The This will play into my suggestions on authority next. I believe this will probably be more an advisory in nature type committee. So I would recommend that we change the amendments to, like I stated before, being something that only the city council can do.
And that was in the form of a motion.
Yes, that is my motion.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Discussion.
Just looking at,
Travis?
I'm just looking at Mike's language and it reads cleaner, clearer, same thing, says the same thing, other than you can change the HRC to Human Relations Council. That's my only comment.
Mike?
So just one point, I guess, maybe to the city attorney. Is it implied in your mind if we say amended by ordinance that the council is the only one that can amend an ordinance in the first place?
Yes, that's my reading of this, and I have never seen any authority granted to a committee or any other body to pass an ordinance underneath our city ordinances. If there's an ordinance that's referenced, it's something that's passed by the city council, and 2 readings before the council are required.
Mike?
So just to continue, I don't have any real opinion either way. I'm fine with either one, but I wanted to clarify that. I don't think that we're in any danger if we keep it simple. And actually, to clarify mine, once you fix the article number, it actually is the current language. I didn't change anything in that one.
All right. Any further discussion? Any further discussion? See none, call the roll.
Schuler,
Yes.
Staley,
Yes.
Zablotny,
No.
Zeltinger,
No.
Lessem,
No.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Mathested,
Yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion passes.
All right, motion passes. Moving on to number 6, Article 2.
Madam Chairwoman?
Mike?
I would move my language on this one for Article 2 authority. Hopefully, everybody has that in front of them. I think, so I'll leave it there, and we can have the discussion.
And that's in form of a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Travis? Okay, discussion.
So one of the things here, I think, once you take care of the things that Miranda's looking for, and I'd be welcome to an amendment on the HRC versus Human Relations Committee. It leaves us closer to the original language, leaves us closer to that original intent. I think we're both going for the same thing, actually. I think really what we want to do is codify in the ordinance that it is advisory in nature. And the way that I do that is in the first line, just saying it's an advisory committee. If you look up definitions online, that's typically the way that that's referred to. And Miranda's doing very much a similar thing there. So, I think the other thing that my language does is it really removes one of the big questions that the council struggled with, which was the additions of the whether it's groups or different persons. And it really goes back to, I think, what we were trying to do in our early discussions, which is to say, look, if this committee does get spun up, it's going to be focused on equal rights for everybody and really focused on equality in that direction.
Discussion.
Madam Chair.
Miranda, yes.
I think you're right. I think we are looking down the same path for our vision for what the committee is going to be in the future. I do have some issues with some lack of verbiage. I know you all got a copy of my my recommendations, but I don't see in here, it just says that it's an advisory committee established by the authority of the city council of the city of Minot. It shall be responsible for promoting communications between all parties, leading to equal opportunity and treatment of all persons. I think they're very similar, but I don't believe it gives direction as to what should be done with that information, whereas in the amendment that I provide, it states that it is advisory in nature, and reports and recommendations would be submitted to the city council with final approval for any actionable items being with the city council. So I believe there's some missing verbiage. Again, I think we're on the same page, but I won't be supporting your motion at this time because if it doesn't pass, I'm going to follow up with a secondary motion for mine.
For, Mike?
Yeah, can we have the city attorney, I believe that we hit on the reporting mechanism. Is that right? Didn't we put something in about I'm trying to remember. I keep hitting my microphones. I was thinking that we put language in somewhere. There we go. You found it, the annual report. So, so I guess, Miranda, that's there under the officer duties. And I don't think it's necessarily bad to have it in both. I think that can be okay. And this actually also maybe clarifies recommendations on top of that. Or no, that is there. So formal recommendations and an annual report. So I think maybe I'm talking myself back into this is where we want the language under the duties, I guess is my thought.
Travis?
Mike, would you be open to adding Miranda's language? It says the HRC shall be an advisory in nature and shall submit all reports and recommendations to the city council. Final authority for actionable items shall be with the city council. Put that in right after your last sentence.
So after all persons?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't have any issue with that. I do, just to be clear, I do think it's slightly redundant because we are hitting it in another place, but I don't have any issue with it.
So do you want to amend your motion?
Yeah, I'll amend my motion to include that.
And seconds are right with that, okay.
Can you repeat where that was again? I'm sorry.
It would be right after all persons. So after my last period, it would continue with the two sentences Miranda had, starting with the HRC.
Okay, I'm good.
And Miranda, I would assume there again, when in my amended motion, I'll fix the human relation, the HRC to human relations right away.
Okay.
So that we can get it in there clean the first time.
Okay. Christine?
Yes, with all due respect, I appreciate both of their suggestions. However, I looked at both of them together, and I want to kind of read what I see it, if that's okay.
Sure.
The Human Relations Committee is an advisory committee established by the authority of the City Council of the City of Minot to promote education, diversity, and quality of life of all citizens. The Human Relations Committee shall be responsible for promoting communications between all parties, leading to equal opportunity and treatment of all persons. And the final one was the last thing. They'll be advisory in nature. The Human Relations Committee shall be advisory in nature and shall submit all reports and recommendations to the City Council for final authority for actionable items shall be with City Council. I just felt like there was so much of both that needed to be clarified because there was something being left out. I don't know if it's very wordy, but I feel like it encompasses everything that they're trying to do together. That's just my suggestion.
Okay. So with that suggestion, so we have an amendment on the floor. So with that amendment, I think if your wording were to be considered, I think it would have to be included in that amendment.
So, can we clarify where we are? Because, so I'm amending my original motion, which is a main motion, right? So that becomes the main motion.
So the amendment, does the second agree to the amendment?
Yes, Travis agreed to the
And
original
nobody
amendment.
objects to adding the amendment? Okay, if nobody objects to adding the amendment, then the motion stands as amended. And I think I have, hopefully, the main motion and the amendment encompassed in this blue language that should be on the screen in front of you, if you want to read it and just confirm that that's accurate.
The only thing that I would say is I also did want to fix all the HRC to match what Miranda's going for, which is to make them all just the words.
The Human Relations
Relations.
Committee.
Yeah, but otherwise, I think we've got that. And so then Madam Chairwoman, if I may, I think where we're at, then the main motion is on the table.
Okay.
And so
Christine
this is a
could-
new amendment.
So Christine
Yep.
could offer yours as an amendment.
Yeah. No, that wasn't put back in. The one that I noticed that wasn't put back in was one of Miranda's to promote education, diversity, and quality of life for all citizens, not residents, because not everybody's a resident. They might be temporarily.
So, and I'll tell you this, I learned this about 2 months ago. So we're the citizen of a country. We're
Okay.
the resident of a city.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
So it should state, it should be stated as residents
Okay.
instead of citizens.
Okay, that's interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I thought so too. But anyway, do you want to offer yours as an amendment?
Yes,
Your
I would like to
suggestion.
include that as an amendment to,
Okay.
to what we're seeing on the computer right here.
All right, so where,
Mike.
if you can restate it so that the
Yep.
city attorney can get that in there.
So do you want me to just restate the part I want to include? Okay. The Human Relations Committee is an advisory committee established by the authority of the City Council of the City of Minot to promote education, diversity, and quality of life for all residents.
I'll second that.
And that was your only change? Yeah. Okay, all right. So discussion on the amendment. Mike?
Okay, so I guess it's not a hill that I'm gonna die on, but the only thing that I would say is that the wording gets specific and reaching, I guess, in my mind, when we start talking about really what it's going to do in terms of education, particularly the word diversity. I think that means a heck of a lot of different things to a lot of different people. And then the quality of life, I think, is fine. I think that was in the original one, and I don't necessarily disagree with that one. So, like I said, I don't feel that strongly here, but I do think that this one reaches a little beyond what I was looking for, at least in my original one. So I'll be no on this one.
Janet?
I would fully support this addition because I think Minot is diverse, and just to acknowledge that is a good thing, so.
Rhonda?
Just maybe a housekeeping thing. As I'm reading this, it is kind of difficult to read when you say established by the authority of the City Council of the City of Minot. Other places within this, and I think actually maybe even potentially today, we referred to it as the authority of the Minot City Council. We could clean up some of that language so that it reads a little easier. And I believe we did that. Just I think we called it the Minot City Council in Article 13 in the last thing that we just approved. So rather than having the wording of the authority of the City Council of the City of Minot, we could clean that up to say the authority of the Minot City Council, and then
So Christine, are you okay with that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I agree.
Other discussion? Travis?
This is an open question to everyone. And I appreciate any answers, but I would like definition of what it means to promote diversity.
Okay, can I answer
Christine?
something? Okay, so let's give you an example. So someone who was maybe a person who had problems with drugs, and then they're trying to reassimilate into the community, and they get some pushback because they find out they were a past person who had drug problems. That's a diverse situation, because how do you handle someone who's trying to do better for themselves, and then, they're looked at or shunned upon because of that issue? I have a perfect example. I'm not going to speak about who the person is, but they were actually treated differently when they were told in a place where they needed to get help. And when they found out one of the reasons they were not well is because of their past history. And the person who told me this told me they felt completely shut down, and they changed their opinion of them. And you could tell the demeanor she said it was awful. So she didn't get the help she needed. And I don't know if that's a perfect example, but that's a really immediate example that I heard just this week. That's the only way I can understand diversity, because they changed from one to a different. Maybe that's not the definition.
Okay.
Perhaps if we
Janet?
just added the word support, to promote education, to support diversity. So supporting diversity, because I think that would be an important thing for me in a community.
If we look at a definition, if I may,
And if you can talk into your mic just a little bit more.
sorry.
please. Thank you.
The condition of having or including people from different ethnicities and social backgrounds. I'd have no problem with that definition, but I'm afraid that diversity is defined by many people in ways that it's not in the dictionary, right? So I do appreciate your suggestion, because supporting diversity is fine if we use it in the definite term. But if it means that we're going to support, if diversity means that we're going to support all types of different behaviors versus ethnicities or social backgrounds, which I think is what it means to a lot of people without them really looking at what the word means, I have a problem with that. Diversity can mean too many different things, and I think, you know, that your example is addressed here, that we have promote communications between all parties leading to equal opportunity and treatment for all persons. I absolutely agree with you. Someone that's made mistakes, because we're all imperfect, doesn't deserve to live with the repercussions of a mistake for their entire life if they've changed their ways. And so, but we also have a social contract per se, and it's called the law. It's called morals and standards and what everybody, you know, treatment, proper treatment of others, and that should rule the day per se. So I struggle with diversity because it way too many different connotations. I don't think that it's the city council's business to necessarily dive into that. Quality of life for all residents, yes. Do things that lead to equal opportunity and treatment, which would mean, you know, fairness under the law, fairness under whatever it is we do as a city, is a part of that statement already without that word.
If I could
Miranda.
just give one more example. I'm in Minot now currently, we have a teacher shortage, and so Magic City campus has hired teachers from the Philippines, and the city of Sawyer has also hired teachers from the Philippines. So they're living in Minot, and I think it's wonderful that we have that extra viewpoint from them. And so again, I think it's nice if Minot is an openly stated community that we support that, and that we support welcoming people in, especially because they're doing work that we apparently haven't been able to find enough on our own here. And veterinarians, is the same. Trinity Hospital is the same. So just through those employment, we have many ethnicities that are already here and represented.
Madam
Miranda?
Chair, when I wrote the word diversity into my suggestion, I simply looked it up on the Merriam-Webster dictionary, which would be something we're all familiar with. Diversity is a noun defined as the quality or state of being composed of many different elements or types, and it's used in a sentence: the diversity of plant life on the tropical island is staggering. While one person may interpret it one way, it doesn't necessarily mean that's the way that it's defined. I don't believe it to be a negative word. I believe that it basically is stating that we're looking at promoting different elements within our community to welcome different thoughts, whether it be socioeconomics or cultural or all of these different things. And the HRC is going to be, it's not going to be us sitting up here. It's going to be a group of other people. They're going to be tasked with probably some difficult things and bringing some additional potentially education. That's why I put that in there for how this can impact our community. I guess when I'm looking at the word diversity, I'm simply looking at what's in the dictionary and seeing it as the word that it is rather than trying to read into it. And that's why it ended up in my suggestion.
Thank you. Travis?
Mike, I guess in response to a couple of comments, and you talked about Filipinos coming to teach. You know, what's different about that today than it ever has been in this country? We're a nation of immigrants, and I don't think we, as a matter of fact, we're probably too open-doored today, but we're not from the standpoint that we allow people in. I don't know of any instances where we've shunned any ethnicities of any color, any race. And I guess, Miranda, my contention with the use of diversity is the modern definition of it today. The reason we're sitting here right now today isn't because there are people of different races, walks, ethnicities that came to this community that were ran out. We don't run out people of different color, different nationalities, different backgrounds. I have not seen that. Are there scenarios where people get into arguments and disagreements? Yes, but as a community, heck no, that doesn't happen here. Not to say that we should, you know, it's like election integrity. The minute you assume it's all okay, you're going to have problems. You're constantly looking to make sure it stays that way. But at the end of the day, diversity in today's society means something totally different than Webster Merriam's dictionary, and that's my contention with the word, I guess.
Lyanne?
I would like to know how, with that description or the definition or the situation that was described with diversity, how this future Relations Committee would work to fix that. Because are we going to mandate, or are they going to mandate a private company or a private health service company or whoever was doing this to mandate that they treat somebody differently when it's their own private business? Or what authority would we have, or what authority would we then be giving to the city council or asking the city council to do? When it says city council to promote education and quality of life for all residents, then we have to define quality of life also. I mean, quality of life to me is life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. We can all do that individually. I'd like to know how, in that situation, we could correct it through the city council. Because I don't know that that's...
Lisa?
Yes.
I guess from the very first time I saw the article about this committee in the Minot paper way back in April, I never looked at it as a place where we were going to mandate anything, because you can't mandate open-mindedness, or you can't force people to change a long-held religious belief that they've had. But I really see this committee would be more in the purposes of being a listening post, so that if there's some problem or conflict, we would be able to listen and hear the parties talk about it as more of a mediation, rather than that. We can't ever force anybody to change behavior or force a company. So, if there is an official civil rights violation, there already are laws to handle that. But I just see this committee as being kind of a public relations, human relations, how to create a welcoming environment or create listening opportunities.
We temporarily lost our screens, but I'll respond just briefly on that too, and I'll be quoting Alderman Janser, who brings this up many times. But several years ago at City Council, we had a gentleman who came to our City Council meeting, and he is bound to a wheelchair. That's how he transports himself around, and there were not cab services available, I believe, after 6 o'clock at night. As City Council members, we weren't aware of that until he came to us and he told us that, and we were able to make a change. So I think in that situation, his diversity was the fact that he needed to have transportation provided for him, and and we were made aware of it, and we changed an ordinance so that we were literally mandating that cab services would provide a vehicle that had handicap accessibility. Lyanne?
And in that situation, let me go back. I'm the oldest one here, I'm sure. So back before the flood of 2011, I don't think I ever attended a city council meeting. In fact, I know I didn't, because I felt that was for the contractors and whoever was doing the city business. And then after the flood, and coming up here and having to speak in front of the dais and the other was a terrifying experience. But I felt so passionate about those zombie homes. I went beyond I'm still uncomfortable up here, but I went beyond my comfort level. And it was at the city council under personal appearances, which I didn't understand at that time what that was. I was told by one of the council members, this is what you do. Then that started the ball rolling, and one of the former council members put a little bit of money in there to start the pot rolling. And with this gentleman, he came to the city council. That's where you get the direct action. If somebody comes and just sits here and discusses, nothing's going to be done. Like this has been going on now since April, because we're discussing, and they'll be discussing in the future. I like that we can go directly to the city council. It has changed with Facebook, with the openness, with the personal appearances. that right there in the city council has made it an accepting practice to come and voice the concern about whether it's the leaves or not having taxi service, and then something was done because they brought it directly to you rather than having to go through a committee and then have to, that's how I'm seeing this.
Miranda?
So in that instance, I was on council at the time. Council actually did not make a change. They referred it to an ad hoc committee, which I chaired. It was the taxi ad hoc committee. We met several times outside of council and then made a recommendation to council on how to address that. That is one example of diversity, in my opinion. Another thing, and Lisa will remember this as well, on council when we were approached about methadone clinics coming to town, there was a lot of pushback on that. But people who live with addiction still live in our community. And it became kind of an education where we as council members at that time had to look into the services that were provided, how they were handled in other communities, and then talk with residents about that and ultimately approve those clinics being opened within our community. Again, that's promoting education for a diverse community. By pretending that these people who live in our town with addiction or people who have mobility issues, by pretending those issues don't exist because they don't affect us, doesn't make us a welcoming community. By having those voices here makes us a more diverse and fulfilled community, in my opinion. So again, with the word diversity, I don't see a negative connotation to it. I see it as a word that works well in both of these situations.
Mike?
So again, at the beginning when I talked about this, there was a reason that I wanted to remove a bunch of the items to me that first of all created a bunch of the controversy, I believe, and second of all set the committee up for a much more active role in what it's doing. And I'll ask Councilman Burlingame, I don't mean to put you on the spot necessarily, but just a thought, and I'd love your comment on it. I feel in this case where we're setting ourselves up, these are great examples of things that are very real in our community, and I don't think anybody up here at all disputes them. My question for you and for others is do we want to set up our government as the answer to all of these questions? If we've got somebody who is having an issue with something in town, if they're not being able to get around, we've got a wonderful nonprofit world in our city. We've got great leaders in many of them. We do business with a lot of them, and so I get to meet them and work with them. Do we want to set up the government and the city council directly as the way to solve every problem? Or are we doing those things well and we actually want to push that a little that way and have them be the main way that we solve things? That's not to say they can do all of them. If there's truly an ordinance or a law change, certainly it has to come to the council. But many of these things are, oh, did you know about this? It's connecting the dots. It's connecting people to resources. And I don't think we want them all looking here.
Scott?
Yeah, so I think that I enjoyed this conversation because I think that there's a lot of great points being made on several different directions, and coming along with it is a person who works in a nonprofit organization that works with people who are living with addiction and trying to get clean and sober, and works with people with physical disabilities. In both those cases, I don't necessarily want, I think that we do share a risk of doing some harm with having people tell their stories if we can't do anything about it, that there can become almost a re-victimization in that case. If somebody has to get up, especially in something as high pressured as what city council can be during public comments, that can be, the reality is there may be things where city council can't do anything. That is absolutely, Mike, I agree with you, not the role of city council to become engaged. But that being said, also, I think it's important to realize that sometimes by getting stuff out from behind the closed doors and into the public, we can begin to create the community discussion that can help solve some of those issues. The reason that we had, that we've done so much around addiction and around mental health has been in a large part because our First Lady right now is a person who is living and thriving in recovery. And she does that, and she has that public face of able to do that, and she's able to talk about that, and has been able to influence policy. But again, I think that that's not necessarily that it's the role of government to fix the problem, but it can be the role of government at times to kind of create the bully pulpit, to have that ability to talk about what the issues are in our community, and then to bring the right people together. Those of us in the nonprofit world, we're oftentimes underfunded and undergunned. There's only so much that we can actually do, and we need to have these conversations and create them. And sometimes at city council, I've done that. I've stood up here before I was on the council, speaking for our nonprofits, our community, not asking for anything other than saying, this is the state of our nonprofits, and these are the struggles that we're having, and using that because we are in front of the media, we are in front of decision makers, we are in front of business leaders, and being able to use that as that centralized point to tell the story. So I'm kind of a yes and on both of these situations, if that makes sense.
Mike?
And just, so I think what you just said is super important, because this is something that I know I've said at this podium, and I know I said it at the county podium as well. One of the things that we've done locally, and I think this is happening everywhere, because we've made government the answer so often, particularly from a funding perspective, we have made it okay not to support the people around us. We've made it okay not to say, I'm going to help the person next to me, or I'm going to help this nonprofit, because they can legitimately say, my tax dollars already do that. The easiest example right now, and it's not to pick them out, I'm sure they do wonderful work, but Project B is one of 9 nonprofits that works on homelessness in the city. We have two funding authorities, or 2 taxing authorities that have them as line items in their budget. What about the other 8? So people can legitimately say, my tax dollars are already taking care of homelessness because Project B is getting city funds to do that. I've talked to the leader of another nonprofit working in the homeless space, and they would love additional funding and would love people to help them. And so I get a little nervous when government becomes the answer, because my tax dollars become the answer then. I don't have to help anybody. I've already taken care of that. My tax dollars do it. So that's, again, I think back to my main point here, I feel that this additional sentence, I think it's asking a lot of the committee. I think by simply saying what's already there, which says leading to equal opportunity and treatment for all persons, gets at the exact same idea. It's much less in-your-face language, and it also isn't talking about an action that they're going to need to perform along the lines of education or promoting diversity. It simply says we're gonna make sure that everybody's treated the same way, and that's my take on it.
Travis?
If I could, and I'm going to circle back and support what Mike's saying, but the word diversity, Miranda explained what it meant, and Lisa, I guess the question to you is a handicap diversity. Made that comment, I guess. Is that what you consider diversity?
I consider it part of diversity.
Okay, so that doesn't.
That person's situation was different than my situation, so.
Gotcha. And Miranda alluded to diversity being an addiction. So now we're talking about physical limitations, we're talking about decisions that were made, personal decisions, in situations in life, and that was my point about the word, is that it becomes wide open to every interpretation of every situation, and now we're opening the door as government to needing to be the answer to all of those things. And I'd go back, if it simply meant, in today's vernacular, ethnicities and social backgrounds, meaning how you were brought up, if you were raised in Russia or China or whatever, right? We were brought up differently. We believe different things, all the rest. That's diversity. I get that. But in today's language, it means handicapped. It means drug addicted. It means making different choices about what sex you might be. It means all of those different things. And all of a sudden, this committee is supposed to deal with those. We're strictly dealing with welcoming people in as the word is described. And, I can support it, but I can't, that that word, you know, particularly in there. I think it goes back to needing to be simplified, as Mike said. Doesn't mean that you can't deal with those issues, but it doesn't mean that we're going to deal with every possible scenario that someone feels slighted about.
Any,
Madam Chair.
Miranda?
This, from what we're stating here, there's one more thing I think I'll need to clarify, but this is an advisory committee. So the way I see it would be someone comes to the council with a concern. The council, rather than creating an ad hoc committee like they've done in past to discuss a topic and see if there's a solution for it, could refer these things to the Human Relations Committee for an advisory recommendation, so to speak. With regards to the taxi cab ad hoc committee, we included the taxi cab owners in town to be as part of that. And it ultimately did result in a change to an ordinance that was actually suggested by the local business owners. So those things could be referred to this committee. One other thing that I'd like to mention, and I don't want to muddy the waters too much more, Mike, in your initial motion, and Christine, in your amendment, we're keeping everything the same except for Article 2. The title of this article is authority. And if we're talking about words having meaning, authority, when it refers to government, under the Merriam-Webster dictionary, says lawful control over the affairs of a political unit. In my suggestion, I wanted to change that word to advisory in nature. And I believe, as we're talking about this, if we're considering, and I think we're all leaning towards the advisory, we need to change that word as well and get rid of the word authority, because the authority isn't going to be with this committee.
Lyanne?
Going back to what Miranda just said, if somebody comes to the city council and formerly they did an ad hoc, are they going to replace ad hoc committees then to go to this committee for everything then? Because technically we could do that. We wouldn't have because this would be the ad hoc committee for everything, and I don't know that that's where the fall would go, because saying we can go to the ad hoc committee and go to this instead, or I just think this is another committee now that's just getting dumped on. I don't know.
And I'll respond and just say that we wouldn't be, any action that we're taking here is not going to tie the hands of the city council or the mayor. And so if the mayor and the city council chose to send something to this committee, that would be the option, but it wouldn't be saying that there could not be an additional ad hoc committee. And I need to go back to Miranda. I apologize. Were you making that in the form of a motion?
I don't know that I need to make it in the form of a motion, because like I said, I think we're muddying the waters, but because the motion on the table is the amended motion that was made by Christine and seconded by me, Christine should have the ability to make that change. Is that correct, City Attorney?
So the motion that we're at is the amendment on education, diversity, and quality of life. So my concern is, if you want to make the motion, does the second agree with it?
I would agree if she was.
And then,
I don't know that we need to make another amendment, because if that's the case, then we would have to make an amendment.
so once there's a motion and a second, the decision on whether or not to amend it further belongs to the body. And so if somebody objects to further amending the title of the article, then that would take this back to a vote. So does anybody object to including, in addition to the amendment of adding education, diversity, and quality of life, that language in the second line, city council to promote education, diversity, quality of life for all residents, and then also changing the title of the article? Does anybody object to including a change to the title of the article in that amendment?
Mike?
Just one discussion about, I'm not sure that I object, because I just want to clarify slightly. I'll be no on the amendment. I think I've been clear about that, but I do agree with the title. So what I guess my suggestion would be is that we hold that and we just do it as another amendment right after we finish this, because I think we've kind of all agreed we're not going deeper than a single amendment level, correct?
That's correct. So if you object to changing the title, then that, I would consider that to be an objection to further amending the amendment. And I would recommend that we first vote on Ms. Staley's amendment prior to proceeding to another one.
One quick question. If we approve the amendment that's on or the amended wording as we see it, do we have the ability to go back and then rechange just for the title? Because we've approved it as it's written right now.
If I could, I think where we're at, because we're inside my original main motion.
Yes.
Which is the entire text, right? So once this amendment was done, we could bring a new amendment for the title.
To further amend the main motion.
And I do have one more amendment once we've finished this amendment. So,
All right.
just so you all know.
So I think our best recommendation right now is to not change the title.
No, and I would say that we can't if, committee
there's an
member
objection.
And again, to be
wasn't
clear,
objecting to
I
that.
object only to doing it with this. That's my,
Procedurally.
yeah, procedurally, yep.
Okay,
So then the motion on the floor would to amend the main motion to include the language in this second and third line, city council to promote education, diversity, and quality of life for all residents.
so is there any discussion related to that part of the?
So I just have one more comment. What was it you put in front of diversity? Support?
Support, yeah, to promote education, to support diversity. Was my
I like
suggestion.
that language to include that because
I would support that as well.
I think that is really what we're trying to do here is to open it up so people do feel supported. Not necessarily that we're going to be able to tackle every issue, but with the future, we don't know what things are going to hold. I like that. It kind of encourages the support.
Okay,
It's a promise. It feels like it's promising.
so discussion related to that part of the amendment. Mike?
Well, we have the motion maker is okay and you're okay as a
And we're gonna do
second,
it,
so
yes.
that becomes the motion now, right?
Unless
Well,
someone,
unless someone objects.
Objects,
to
I don't
including
object.
The
That's
term
fine.
support.
Okay, so no further discussion related to the second line.
No, to adding that, but I do have more for the full line now.
Okay,
Okay.
all right. So with this being an amendment, are we ready to vote on the amendment?
To be clear, the motion has now been adjusted to add support. The second agreed. We're back to Christine's motion, which is to add the line,
Yes.
correct? So I still have discussion on that, just to be
Okay.
clear. Okay, so as long as we're still there. So my one point, and this actually gets to what you just said, Christine, because I think where we really can get ourselves into trouble, because we have seen it, is if we're giving the population of our city the idea that this is going to solve things, but it has no authority to, and there's really no expectation that it will, that may get worse. And I think that's what, if not to put words in your mouth, Scott, but I think that was a little of what you were hitting on there. And I think in some ways it may actually get worse because that's what we've seen with this process, is that the city council had multiple opportunities to get through this process and be done. And you can debate whether that was a good or bad thing. Maybe there's those that believe this has been a very good process, and I'm fine with that. But the point is, when you do draw it out like this, and the city council having someone come before them with a question or something they want taken care of, the city council can act, and they can get that taken care of. Or they can choose a 4-month path to get back to the same spot where they can't act. And now somebody doesn't feel great about that process. And so, again, when we give people the thought that government is going to solve my problem and it's not able to, they don't have anywhere to turn. And I want you to be cautious about that that's not a path that's sustainable.
Any further discussion on the amendment?
Can I just?
Yeah, I just want to throw out one thing. One conversation that did come up a lot during our long drawn out discussion on what does education mean? And when I hear promote education, I think there can be a role potentially for going back to, it is not the role of this committee to enforce human rights laws. It's not the role of this committee to even define necessarily what those are. However, I'll go back to my bully pulpit. It can educate. We could bring in somebody like the North Dakota Department of Labor Division of Human Rights, and they could talk to people, and they could educate this committee, and they could educate the members of the community on this is what discrimination laws are in North Dakota. And if you do feel like you're discriminated against, don't go to the Human Relations Committee. Go to that facility that actually has enforcement law mechanisms and everything else. So I think that that's what I look at when I see promote education is not to lead people further astray with false information, but rather to guide them to the right place. So I've always felt there's a time and a place for that.
Mike?
So, and I apologize, everybody. I feel like this is one of the most important conversations we're having. So I'm not meaning to draw it out, but this may be something for the city manager. One of the things that you just said, Scott, I think is powerful because this is what I saw in the Fargo version of this. Now, they do term it a human rights, so there's a little difference there. But that's exactly what they do. They'll bring in, I think it's called the High Plains Housing Center or whatever that one is. They came in and gave a presentation. The thing I found interesting about that was, from what I could tell, it was the same thing we have in our chamber today. You know, my wife is here to observe. Hopefully there's people watching online. But the point is, it seemed to be the main education going on was the committee. It wasn't filling some big need in the community from what I could see. It wasn't bursting at the seams for people to come in and learn about what housing law looked like and even what, you know, like the last city council meeting, what the housing situation looks like in the city. I don't see that. So in order for that to turn into a real educational element, I think it's got to be something completely different. And Harold, to go back to what I was mentioning for you, have you seen that? Have you seen those types of educational things as a fruitful part of what these can do? Because that would educate me a little, because that's not what I saw with Bismarck or Fargo at all.
Manager?
I would say it varies by community. Engagement changes from community to community. Unfortunately, public meetings in more or less empty rooms is becoming more the norm. Voter turnout continues to decrease. Civic engagement continues to decrease. So, you know, is it a for sure that the creation of this committee is going to be the magic bullet to solve all these problems? No, but it will be one element in communities that I've seen measures like this be successful are ones that are doing kind of what Alderman Burlingame talked about, is the Human Relations or Human Rights Committee or Commission or whatever you want to call it is a public forum for people to come and express their concerns in a public format. And two is to provide an opportunity through that public format to provide education. And that can be done in a variety of ways. It can be done in a formal meeting like this, with a committee meeting. It could be an informal, you know, it could be sponsoring a speaker or resources to come into the community and do an education component. I've seen committees have booths at a public festival, giving out materials on human rights and resources and all those other kinds of things, that you're in a public forum that if you happen to be walking by and you have an issue, you know, here's a place that you can pick up some information on where do I go to get that help. That I've seen be successful as well. I've also seen it get really ugly, and again, that's a reflection of the community and where they're at with their culture and their opinions and those kinds of things, and it varies from community to community.
Can I just say
answer
one
your
last
question?
thing? I don't look at this as we're going to be solving any problems, because that's not the intention of this language, I think. But I do like what you just mentioned, City Manager, because I feel like we're more of a resource, because once they do get out, the information will be out there and then people can attract them. We can also have a follow-up. It's always about follow-up. Do you need help? Can we send them somewhere where they can get more attention for whatever that issue is? Because we don't know. I don't know all the resources in the community. I'm quite, resourceful myself. So I think this might be that. I would never expect and I understand where you're coming from, thinking like the government role, thinking people, that's it, you're going to get it one and done. But I don't think that's the case here. I think people are going to feel a little bit more comfortable, know that at least we'll lend an ear and understand and try to work through it. Because there might be other people going through things that once that person goes, they'll be able to come out and feel more comfortable. It's all about learning process, I think.
Any further discussion on the amendment? See none, call the roll.
Staley,
Yes.
Zablotny,
No.
Zeltinger,
No.
Blessam,
No.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Mathested,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Schuler.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Miranda.
I'd like to amend the motion that was just passed to update the title of the Article 2, rather than authority, to change it to advisory in nature.
Is there a second?
A second.
Scott? Discussion? Any discussion? Travis?
So help me and everyone else understand, please, maybe Miranda as an example. Well, if we're advisory in nature, but all actions are to be taken by the city council, who are we advising? Are we advising residents that come with problems, or are we advising the city council to deal with the residents? That's
Miranda?
The advisory in nature, if you were to look at the revisions presented by Alderman Evans, Alderman Janser, and then a lot of the articles provided by Bismarck, Fargo, and Dickinson, the majority of them title, if you look, for instance, I just pulled open Fargo, 15-02-06, Commission Advisory in Nature. Both Evans and Janser's use advisory in nature. The advisory, as we're stating, because this committee doesn't have the authority to uphold federal or state law, it's a group of citizens that are appointed by yet to be determined. They don't have the authority to prosecute or to take someone to court or whatever would be the outcome of someone who violates a federal or a state law. This group would advise the city council if they see a potential path to rectify an issue, or if they see the ability for the city to grow in a potential way that has been brought to them by someone who might come to this committee. I don't believe there should be the word authority. It doesn't work in definition, and in nearly every one of the suggestions presented to us, it was changed, or it was advisory in nature.
Travis?
So I understand and I agree that we're not authority. And I guess the clarification you made was that we're advisory strictly to the city council. So those folks that may come to this committee, if that's what it becomes, we're not going to provide them any answers. We're going to forward something on to the city council to make a decision or take action on. Correct?
That is what we just
Sure.
approved as well. If you read the final sentence of what was approved, final
Well, and
authority for actionable items.
I see that,
shall
but
be with the
that's
city
not what the
council.
conversation was in entirety. So I just wanted to clarify that.
And I guess I wasn't following where you were going, Travis, but now I actually do. So if we set up a booth and start handing out pamphlets that say, here's your rights, here's what to do about them, that's not advisory in nature. We're advising the public at that point. We're stepping in front of the city council to do that. The committee would be. I think there is actually a contradiction here that we got to be a little bit careful about, and that gets a little bit into the other motions I talked about last meeting on what actually this committee will have the power to do. And so I do think we want to be a little bit careful about what actually that education looks like. And I actually thought that was something that good that could come from this, was that they wouldn't necessarily look to some, appointed committee, but you could tell them, here's your rights. If you were discriminated against, you have rights under the law, and here's who you need to talk to about that. I think that is a very good thing. But if we're saying all authority is through the city council, I don't want to refer them to the city council to do that. But I think that's what this is saying.
It says final authority for actionable items will be with the city council. So if, like you just stated, someone comes in and feels discriminated against, maybe from a housing standpoint, and the committee is able to provide them with documentation on how they can go about addressing that issue, that is not an actionable item. We're not asking the city council to change anything. We're providing that information. And it likely won't be any of us, so I don't even want to use the word we. This committee will be the one providing that information. Final authority for any actionable items, like for instance, when we talked about the taxi cab ad hoc committee making a recommendation for an actionable item to change an ordinance, that would be an actionable item. If the committee sees someone and just provides information, that authority, again, has nothing, because there's no actionable item in that instance.
Travis?
So again, as an if we're an advisory committee, if the HRC is an advisory committee established by the authority of the City of Minot City Council to promote education, support diversity, and quality of life, all of our action that we would take is only to provide suggestions in an advisory nature to the city council to take action in regards to those areas, then, correct? Is that how you see that? We're not actually gonna do any education as a committee. We're not actually going to go out and promote that businesses put transgender bathrooms in. We're not actually gonna go out and get bids on sidewalks or taxi cab companies. We're gonna basically look at the issue, advise the city council, and they're going to take the action. Am I clear? Is that how I should understand that? That's what I'm asking. Any comments? from
I
anyone?
guess I'm getting fully behind you here, Travis, because we had a really slippery slope in front of the committee now. I'll try to not say we as well. Because one of the things that I get worried about, I'll just give you a really quick example. So let's say that the Human Relations Committee down the road is sitting in their, they've got public comment going on. They've got someone that comes in and says, I was discriminated against by XYZ property management company. I came from that world. I did that for 5 years before my current gig. And they say that name in a public meeting like this. And the Human Relations Committee decides, yeah, that doesn't sound very good. You better go talk to this person. Man, you're headed down a strange path when you're talking about, I guess, acknowledging that might have been a violation of law. That's why, to me, this gets to be a pretty scary spot to be on this committee in the first place, because and believe me, I know the Fargo one is a different deal, but keep in mind, I think I gave this example before. They literally created a subcommittee of their committee to go to a business to investigate a racial slur that was used on a bus. And they wanted to talk to that owner about what was done to that employee. You can go back and watch the meeting on that. That's what they did. And so this is a slippery slope that I just want us to be careful about. And I actually, at first, I was like, yeah, this makes sense. I was going to support this. But I think authority actually is the right word. All that we really need here is to say the city council created it. We have advisory in nature right in the first sentence. I think that does the same exact thing, but it doesn't say specifically, or I guess stop it in the title itself. I'll be no on this just for that. I think we've covered it in the first sentence.
Any further discussion on the amendment? Any further discussion? See none, call the roll.
Schuler,
Yes.
Staley,
Yes.
Zablotny,
No.
Zeltinger,
Oh,
Lessem,
No.
Burlingame,
No.
Mathested,
yes.
Olson.
Yes.
Motion fails.
Madam Chair, then I have one more amendment I would
Yes.
like to offer. So
Yes.
after the third and fourth line, shall be responsible for communications between all parties leading to equal opportunity and treatment for all persons. I would like to say then with special concern for persons in federally protected class, because that says that we see, there are all of these different groups that are more prone to be discriminated against. And it seems like we're just trying to hide the whole group under just saying all people. And I would like to just note that, there is a federally protected class, which is a whole list. And that's where a lot of disagreement came before, because we were trying to name the list. But if we just leave it general as federally protected class, then that accommodates changes down the road, because what's on the list today might be changed in 10 years from now, whatever, so.
That's in the form of a motion. Is there a second?
Yes.
Are you seconding it, Travis? We need a second. Is there a second?
I'll second for discussion.
Thank you. Travis?
My question is regarding the last vote. Because it was a tie, it failed?
It fails.
For lack of a majority.
Say it again?
It fails for lack of a majority.
Can I ask to qualify what federally protected class means, some specifics, because I'm not really familiar with that term.
If you just go on the internet and Google it does list, that's when that lists race, color, religion, national origin, gender, disability, it lists veteran. It was the whole list that Carrie first put. That comes right off of a federal list.
Okay.
Of who is officially considered protected. So,
I'm just
Travis?
I'm wondering if the motion could be restated. Make sure I'm following.
say what now?
Can you restate your motion?
Okay, she has it typed now. I don't know if you can see that in your screen there.
Madam Chair,
Miranda?
I just pulled it up just for clarification. Federal law protects 9 different classes: sex, including sexual orientation and gender identity, being 1, race, color being 2, age being 3, disability being 4, national origin being 5, religion or creed being 6. Actually, I think that it says 9, but I think they've lumped some of these together. And genetic information, which was added in 2008. It also states that many states, and I'm not sure about North Dakota, will give certain protected groups special protection against harassment and discrimination. Pregnancy status looks to be also included on this, veteran status. I'm just wondering if I missed anything. You can find it pretty easily.
Travis?
I'm wondering how that sentence even goes together when talking about promoting communications between all parties leading to equal opportunity and treatment for all persons. I didn't hear a darn thing about a white, straight male Christian in there. Where's my equal treatment? Why do we have to have all these classes? Why can't we just treat everyone equally? Everyone. Why do we have to pick out a group and identify them? That's not equal treatment.
Can I follow up on
Miranda?
that? I tend to agree with you, Travis. I did second the motion so that we could have discussion. I believe the wording, and I appreciate your amendment very much, Janet. The wording for treatment for all persons does adequately address what we need to address here. I am concerned about the with special concern, specifically those wording. I don't want to give special concern to any one individual group, whether it be any one of the 9 protected classes or someone who maybe doesn't identify in those 9 classes. I would like to provide, I would hope that the committee that gets appointed to this would provide equal treatment to all persons regardless of any class that they might identify as. So while I did second this for discussion, I won't support this motion.
Lyanne?
And going back to both of these comments, shall be responsible for promoting communications between all parties leading to equal opportunity and treatment for all persons. That's all inclusive. But then we're going to add with special concern for certain individuals. Then that undoes everything that we just said in that first part. And to me, we don't want discrimination for anybody. We don't want special opportunities or special accommodations that does not fit, because we're going to give equal opportunity for transportation, equal opportunity for employment, equal opportunity, treatment for all persons. We don't know what someone's, just having an escalator and elevator for some people is, but to put in special concern after we say equal, those two do not, they're diverse. They're total ends of the spectrum, and I can't support that.
Madam Chair. You know, if in a world that was fair, we wouldn't even have this federal list, but it's because of the whole history of discrimination through decades and centuries that this list has come to be, because the fact is not all people are treated equally, and even in Minot. And I mean, Travis, just because you don't happen to know anybody who's had a bad experience, then you just assume that it doesn't happen. And again, from your position as a white, straight male, you aren't aware of all the ways that people are passed over or trodden upon because of their class that they are in, their minority class. So
Travis?
I would advocate that the language in this committee won't change that ever.
But I think it just tells
Those
people, we
people-
see you. You're not hidden from us. We see you and we know, we acknowledge that discrimination exists in Minot.
But it will still
We're
happen.
acknowledging that. It will still happen, but to be seen as, can be a really valuable thing for a person.
You're discriminating against everybody else when you put that in there.
Can I make a
Christine?
comment? We have a lot of things going on right now with borders. And if there was like an illegal person in our town, do they fall under this? Or is it all persons?
I would think so.
Okay.
Any further comments on the amendment?
Just wanted to just make a point. Janet, I know where you're coming from with this, wanting to make sure that we're making people feel seen and heard. And my hope is that that this Human Relations Committee can also do that just in itself. There was discussion to have it completely eliminated, and I think by just having it potentially being available to people, I hope that that acts in the same aspect that you're looking to make just this wording act.
Any further discussion? Lyanne?
I think we're getting back to actions versus feelings again, and we cannot, even if we have all this in there and we list every person, we cannot change how they feel. Nobody is ever going to make me feel comfortable to be up here. I don't care how many times I'm here. I don't care how many times I speak. Nobody is going to make me feel comfortable. But I'm here because I feel, well, number one, I was asked, but I had asked to be on it because I felt it was important for a full discussion. I don't want feelings. You can't make somebody feel welcome just by having a word there. They're probably never going to see this. By saying we're going to promote communications between all parties leading to equal opportunity and treatment for all persons, that's the action part. But we cannot make someone feel happy and welcome by putting in there with special concern for these individuals. There are other people who have been discriminated against. There's nothing in there that says people like me who are fat that is not included.
Well,
in this
actually,
list.
obesity is included in some states' federally protected
It's not
classes.
in this one. And it's not a protected class, and I don't ever expect it to be, because that's just me. I mean, that's who I am. I can't support that.
I just want to say that I agree with your intention here, Janice. I'm again vote no on this only because I don't like the federal government. I certainly don't trust them to do much of anything. And I certainly don't trust them to protect anybody's classes because they could start changing what is a protected class tomorrow. And I don't want to do that. I don't want to leave it up to them. I'd rather continue to leave it up to us to define it. So I appreciate
Yeah.
what you're doing.
And we're not defining anything. We're just we're just hiding it all behind the word all. And so that's my reason for wanting to put that in there.
And I do appreciate that. And I think that that I said my part.
Any further discussion on the amendment?
Can I mention one more thing? I'm looking at which are not federally protected classes, and this is a big one for me. And I've seen this throughout my life is education level. I don't know whose education level people have until I talk to them and find out. And I think sometimes, unfortunately, people are sometimes taken advantage of because of their lack of education. And that's really unfortunate. And then they don't have the resources to make decisions. So that would be not put under within that scope. And I think that that's a huge thing, especially when a lot of people right now can't afford college and probably aren't thinking about college because they're not that thought, that's not their, so I couldn't support this as well.
Any further discussion? See none, call the roll.
Mathstead?
Yes.
Olson?
No.
Schuler?
No.
Staley?
No.
Zablotny?
No.
Zeltinger?
No,
Blessam?
No.
Burlingame?
No.
Motion fails.
All right, with 11 minutes left, just keeping us in mind of that, are there any other amendments to this article?
Where are we at now exactly again, please?
I need a little clarification on that too, because I believe we have approved the article.
So what you see up on your screen under Article 2, it should be the main motion with the approved amendment to it, to promote education, support diversity, quality of life for all residents. So, Committee Member Blessum, if you want to look at that, make sure that it's consistent with your understanding of your motion. I believe Ms. Staley, you made the motion to include the language in the second paragraph, or the second line. So if you could just review that, confirm that's your understanding.
Did that fail? Aren't we back to the original one that Mike made plus?
No, that one's in, I believe.
Yeah,
The
as I
second
understood
line
it.
2 is in.
Yes.
We did revert on the article title.
Yeah. Fine. And it looks fine.
I think we're on with what you've got, Steph.
All right, so,
Change the HRC on that last,
Oh, yep.
on the second to last
kind of
line.
last line.
Objections here, I assume.
All right, so as it is appearing on your screen will be the way that we'll vote on it. Is there any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Blessum,
Yes.
Burlingame,
Yes.
Mathested,
Yes.
Olson,
Yes.
Schuler, Staley,
Yes.
Zablotny,
No.
Zeltinger.
Oh,
Motion passes.
All right. Well, good work, committee. We got through a lot of discussion and some meaty articles there. With that, just review the dates that are on the agenda for our upcoming meetings. Just as a reminder, we'll meet on November 14th, November 28th. Those will be regular committee meetings, and we're hopeful that we will get through this ordinance in that time. If we need more time, we'll add more time, but it's kind of our hope that that's where we'll be. November 30th will be the meeting that will be open to the public. And then we will hopefully be able to get our final recommendations at that time. And I believe when Alderman Burlingame and I discussed that, we will not hold to the 90-minute restriction on that evening because we'd like to be able to get the business done that evening. And then with the anticipation of the recommendations coming on the 30th, they will appear on the December 18th City Council agenda.
Madam Chair, are all of those meetings at 5:30?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything else that needs to come before us before we adjourn? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.